Yes, I'm April Baker. I'm the CEO at Together Co. And Together Co is a loneliness charity in Brighton and Hove. And it's been creating connections to help people change their lives for over 23 years. So it runs a range of different programs, including befriending and this thing called social prescribing, which maybe in a bit we can get into, Tara, as well. And I'll tell you more about that. And we have over 500 volunteers a year that give their time to support others in our community. It's really about people who are lonely or isolated, knowing they're not alone. In a city of over 300,000 people, no one should need to be lonely or isolated. And obviously, hand over to Marc in a minute. He's going to tell you about collaboration with Marc and other animal charities as well around loneliness. So but that's Together Co and my role.
Thank you, April. Right, Marc, do you want to say hi and tell us a bit about who you are?
Yeah,
and what you do?
First and foremost, I am an ambassador of Together Co, but I also do other stuff. I am a vet, I'm a campaigner, I'm an author, and I also visit local schools to teach about the importance of looking out, caring for animals and looking out for one another. I'm as I say, I'm a very proud ambassador of Together Co, and I love working with April and being part of what she's created. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
It's really quite very special, proud. Isn't it? Yeah, and that's why I'm really glad when both of you agreed to come on, because my podcast is about bringing kind of stories and narratives of adversity with a little sprinkle of psychology on top. But the thing that I want people to take away is, what can I do as the podcast listener sat on the train or wherever? There may be some things that they can learn, but for me, the really important bit is, what can I go and do? Because sometimes and we know that as psychologists, a big gap between I mean well and I want to do stuff, but how do we get people starting to do that? So we're going to talk about some of those barriers today, aren't we? And how to work through them. So what I'm really interested in is then, tell me about your collaboration. We'll broaden out and talk a little bit more about Together Co as well, but let me know a little bit about your collaboration and what you're hoping to achieve by it as well.
Who's that to?
Either of you can just dip in and out.
Okay, I'll go for this one. So basically, I'm a huge advocate for rescue pets, dogs, cats, and anything else really that needs a forever home. And I was already in conversations with April and Together Co, and it just seemed fairly obvious that one of the ways of sort of combating loneliness would be adoption or even fostering of rescue pets. And that can be either permanent adoption, it could be temporary fostering, could be going to a rescue shelter and volunteering to walk the dogs or cuddle the cats. And it was just a really obvious matchup, because we know the benefits, been scientifically proven many, many times, of pets helping humans, and obviously humans helping pets. So it was a simple collaboration, and it's one that we're enjoying pursuing because it helps both pets and humans, and kind of that's exactly what we're about, isn't it? Over to you.
Yeah, no, and what was great is kind of getting creative with this idea as well, to kind of reach people's hearts and minds, to kind of say, if you're feeling lonely and isolated, and what we always say, within Together Co, that's okay. That's a normal human experience, because people need people, we're social beings. But there's lots of different creative ways that you can start to look at that and feel connected, which is to people, maybe to places in your local community, but also pets. And when Marc came and spoke to us and spoke to me, it just felt so right and so connected. He also kindly connected us with local animal rescue centres as well. And we had a big event, didn't we, Marc, on the pier, which was really successful, with Peter Egan, who came, and Gail Porter, and the pier kindly hosted us. And it was Paws2connect over the February, so kind of Valentine, thinking of love in different ways. And I think that for me was that moment when we kind of launched this initiative, really felt quite special, and the response we got has been incredible. We had people during that event came along to the pier, signed up to volunteer both with Together Co and with RSPCA Brighton as well. So it was really exciting. People came and just had conversations. People came and brought their dog and engaged with each other. So yeah, that was a really exciting moment to kind of launch that. And ever since, we've just been, going from strength to strength around sort of the piloting of this, and people starting to foster cats. We've focused on to start with, who are living on their own. So that's kind of where we're at.
Now, one of the things that you've mentioned to me before, April, is just helping people understand different types of loneliness. Is that something you're telling us a little bit about? Because there might be people listening going, well, what is loneliness? And I like to talk about this quite a lot. And one of the things that I like to get across in the media is that people often have a misconception of what loneliness is and who it is that is more likely to experience loneliness.
Yeah, of course. So first off, I always start with kind of loneliness and isolation. So loneliness can be something that you feel it inside. So I could be in a crowded room of people, but I feel something. And a while ago, somebody who has been supported by Together Co described it really well and said it's feeling homesick, but you don't know what home that you're looking for. And I just thought, wow, yeah, that's just it. So it's a subjective feeling. Isolation is the kind of objective nature of kind of not being able to get out. So you're isolated maybe because of a physical health condition, or you have to stay in to care for somebody, so you can't get out. So you've got loneliness and isolation. And then in terms of loneliness as well, there is different experiences of that. So sometimes loneliness can be very much that kind of connection to yourself, so not just to others as well. And I think what's really important to stress to people is that it's firstly absolutely normal to feel this because we are social beings. But secondly, I feel like a lot of images and people's understanding is, oh, okay, so that's when we get older that may happen. And absolutely. Yeah. And it's not the case. There's a lot of young people experiencing loneliness, beat that bit out, because I used to work in homelessness. I work in
makes me feel more human. Other people get things the wrong way around. It's Friday, it's fine.
Loneliness we're talking about, April, not homelessness. So yeah, there's a lot of people experience loneliness, and it's something I experienced and I talk very openly about because there's nothing wrong in that experience. So when I was in my early 20s and I was living in London and I was going to work and then coming home, but I was in a brand new area of London. I didn't really know anyone. My friends were all dispersed across the country, and some weekends I had nothing and no one to see, so I might like pop to like a nail bar just to talk to somebody, and that kind of, it really got to me in the end and actually made me feel really low and had quite an impact on my mental health. So I just want to stress to people, like, it's okay to feel that way, but it isn't just something that we may experience when we're older as well. Of course it can be, but it's not always.
Can I ask a tricky question then? So at that time, did you tell anyone what you were going through?
No.
Or were there barriers? And is it right to ask that? What
of
made
course
you
it is.
kind of hold back?
So it's really interesting. I don't think, looking back now, that I recognized I was lonely.
Wow.
So that's the first thing, is like, I did not think I'm lonely. I thought I'm really not well.
Yeah.
That was the thing. I'm not well, so I need to go to my GP and talk about this, because I was starting to experience very high levels of anxiety, and at one point started to become agoraphobic, where I didn't actually want to leave the house. So I very much thought, this is me. This is completely just what I'm going through. And now obviously looking back, and people talk more about loneliness thanks to lots of different things, such as the Joe Cox Foundation and kind of raising awareness as well. It's like with mental health, you kind of go, that's what that was actually. It was loneliness. It was the social need within me.
Yeah.
Then it led to my mental health and my sort of mental health needs as well. But yeah, and I don't know back then, if I had known I was lonely, if I would have spoken out to say I was lonely. I found it was easier to go to a GP and say, oh, I'm feeling a bit low. So yeah.
So when we think about society and norms and, you know, there's shame, that's a big word. Some people don't even use that word often enough, I don't think. But sometimes it's more socially acceptable to go to the GP, and quite often as well. So we know with emotional health issues that quite often they can show up in the body before we realise what they are. There's a huge mind-body link, isn't there? And the reason that I wanted to get this in before Mark kind of falls asleep and thinks, come on, let's get on to the next bit, it's just that if somebody's listening, before we kind of get onto the right, what do we want people to be doing? I'm just thinking there must be a huge amount of people that don't recognise that they are lonely, or that they might be able to, as a result of this podcast, maybe recognise it in somebody else and maybe begin a conversation. And to me, that's really, really important. That's kind of a core element of what I do. So if there are people that are listening that might start to recognize that or already have, or in someone else, what are you working on together in terms of those next steps? What are the practical things that people can do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing, you mentioned GP, and I mentioned earlier social prescribing. So what you can do, this is across the country. When you go to your GP practice, sometimes you're going there because you feel there's something wrong, but it isn't something that you need a pill for. So there is social prescribers in your GP practice. You can go and you can say, I'm feeling, there's something not quite right. I don't feel connected to people. I don't really, and they will refer you to a link worker. So we have those at Together Co, and that person will work with you on what matters to you, what you enjoy, and stand next to you along your way to connect you to places or connect you to things you need, but also stand next to you for really tough things like, we're doing a lot at the moment with connecting people to financial support or housing benefit, or, so there's a lot of practical support, because everyone needs someone to kind of support you with that, but also like what you enjoy as well. So that would be my first thing to say is, look up social prescribing. So if you go onto the NHS website, social prescribing, there's a map of where you can go and who offers that. The other thing is
in the show notes as well.
Yeah, so that they've just been creating a map with the NHS so you can see where social prescribing is in the country. So that's really positive. The other thing I always say to people, and it's like, if you go into a bookstore and there's a massive self-help section, all this self-help, think about helping others.
Yeah,
that is really important, and it's about what obviously we're going to talk about in a moment with Marc. It is that volunteering, getting out, helping others. Sometimes actually going out and, I don't know, say you're in a shop and someone drops their shopping and you pick up and help and just have those little moments of interactions. Absolutely. They will increase your positive emotion. It's so important. I think we must do something for ourselves and in ourselves, and that's what is creating, I think, this issue in our society of everyone feeling this way.
Is. Yeah.
But it's those little moments. It's kindness, it's connection, it's go and help somewhere, go and give your time to something and come away and see how that made you feel, and you will feel good, and you'll meet friends, you'll feel connected. When I was in London and that started to happen, I went and started to volunteer doing a mentoring program for people going in and out of prison, and I met 2 people who were also doing that, who became my friends. Wow. It really does work as well. But so they would be my 2 main things at the moment, I'd say, to kind of do that. And loads of great websites and places you can go if you're a younger person experiencing loneliness. Lonely Not Alone, the Co-op Foundation, go to their website. There's amazing resources on the Campaign to End Loneliness website, and the Joe Cox Foundation as well.
I'll make sure all of this stuff's in our show notes as well. And just as a side point from that, there's a lot of kind of neurological studies that have shown huge changes across all sorts of domains for helping others, and that could be something really small up to something more formal like volunteering as well. So you say, when people do brain imaging studies, it's absolutely fascinating that one small act can have such a huge impact on your kind of outlook. It can lower rates of depression, it can lower rates of anxiety, it can increase your self-esteem, but also physiological stuff. Can lower your blood pressure. So there's such a huge science behind it as well. But sometimes I think kindness is just about doing a nice thing. But actually, if you can also think that it actually can help you physically and psychologically as well, it's a really good thing. So how do we bridge that gap?
I was going to say with that, I think it's both people benefit as well from this. And it's a quick story and then we'll crack on. But I just want to say on this, yesterday I was in Dorset with my mum. And my mum is probably one of the kindest people I know. Like, she would give you her last sock. And we were in a coffee shop.
She wouldn't give one. And that's not kind, that's mean.
Just her last one. She had no others. It's just one. You can't have 2. But yeah, so she was in a coffee shop, and they had this thing for charity where you put £1 in, you pick up a stick, and then if it was red, you'd won something. And she won something. But we'd already paid for our coffees. And, she does pop in there now and again. But anyway, she turned to the person next to her and said, here, you have the next free drink then, because I've just won this. And that man literally stood there in shock for ages. And he was like, oh, no one's ever done that. And he said at the end, oh, it really does show there is kindness in the world. Now, obviously, that was like, I felt really good because I was like, oh, I'm really proud of my mum. I presume my mum felt good because that was a really nice thing to hear back. But he felt great that someone, and it's just that one moment of doing that. Imagine if we had little bubbles of that happening all across our community, or we'd all start to feel really good with each other as well. So anyway,
pay it forward model, isn't it?
Yeah,
the ripple effect. And I think sometimes you don't realise. I think when I started off my little local project here, part of that was to try and help the community, but I didn't realise what kind of impact it would have on me. So in the rest of my job, it is quite intense. It's, there's some days I have really long clinics, and it's hard to know what to do with everything that's kind of swirling around your head. But by doing the work I do, I've noticed a huge change, and I think my family have, in my own kind of emotional health as a result of doing that. And it was just something I wasn't even thinking about. It was just, there's a gap here. We need to do something. But that's a bigger thing. But as we say, there's smaller things. So let's bring you in then, Marc.
Mm-hmm.
There's something that I really want to talk about as well. So I have another podcast episode coming out in a couple of weeks, just looking at the kind of therapeutic benefits of dogs, just with another guest that I had who had a spinal injury, and his dog helped him through that and still does to this day. And it's just a kind of a fun episode. But then obviously we have you now with your expertise. Is it all right to just start with, why are we talking about animals? What was it about animals that made you think, right, that's a way to get people connected, rather than other kind of human projects?
Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm still waiting for my second sock from April's mum. And I'd like to know when that will arrive, because, obviously I can't now leave the house. It's a type of agoraphobia. It's sock related. I guess, I'm a vet, and I've been a vet for nearly 28 years, which is mental. So I've always obviously loved animals ever since I was teeny tiny, and trying to always find and explore ways to help them, as well as being a vet. I think because I sort of got myself a media profile a few years ago, I was linked then to various animal charities and made maybe more aware of the rescue situation. Certainly after COVID and after the pandemic, with the cost of living crisis, we have more pets being abandoned and sort of queuing up to go into rescue than ever before.
Yeah.
And that's for a number of reasons. Mainly they were poorly socialized or inadequately socialized during the first two lockdowns. People famously bought so many puppies, maybe 2 million puppies in the UK, who couldn't then meet other humans or other dogs. So now they're sort of teenage puppies, if you like, 2-3 years old. A lot of them have behavioral issues, which means that maybe people haven't invested in dog training as that maybe they should have done. And also they're at a point now where it's another mouth to feed. So are we now seeing abandonment because they're too expensive to keep, and maybe even too troublesome to keep in terms of their behavior, which means the rescue shelters are not only having to deal with a surplus of dogs, potentially with problems that need slightly longer to rehabilitate and therefore rehome, but also a lack of donations and a lack of government support in the rescue charity sector. So as always, the dogs are on the receiving end of just all sorts of negativity, and they need our help. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that don't maybe appreciate or acknowledge how much they can help. And I think that's why I was excited to talk to you today, Tara, because I know we're both rescue dog fans. But rescuing a dog doesn't just mean rescuing a dog. It can mean temporarily rescuing a dog or cat, i.e. fostering. It can mean, as we said at the top of the show, going to a rescue shelter and just sort of cuddling a cat for a few hours, or walking a dog. So there's all different levels of how we can help dogs and help rescue shelters and help cats. Now, this is mutually beneficial. As we've mentioned, also studies have shown how pets benefit us. They alleviate stress, they lower our heart rate, all the stuff that we mentioned about just being kind. They provide companionship, they help us become physically active, they fight depression, they encourage our physical fitness. They are the ultimate icebreaker when you're out walking your dog to meet other people.
It's absolutely.
Huge talking point. They facilitate healing and resiliency. But really, more relevant to what we're talking about is this addressing social isolation and loneliness. And there's been so many studies about the role of pet interaction and how important it is to reduce loneliness, and also to have routines, a sense of worth, a sense of purpose. We've all seen the famous scene, the moving scene in Ricky Gervais's Afterlife, where, the dog saves him, really, because he needs to be there to be responsible to look after his dog. And I think that's it's a brutal scene, but it just shows that we all have a responsibility to look after dogs and cats, and how much they give back, and how many people I think would benefit from those interactions, be it a cat cuddle or actually adopting full-time a dog or a cat. So it's really starting these conversations off and just making people aware of the opportunities that they actually have when they probably don't know them all, if that makes any sense.
So many good points there. Is there anything you want to chip in before I do, April?
I mean, when Mark's talking, the two words that came to mind for me were unconditional love as well from an animal, and that is something very special. And actually, when you're feeling isolated, when you're feeling disconnected, that can really, really help in massive ways. And when Mark was talking, I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I'd been listening to a podcast like this and thought about fostering or adopting a cat back in the time in London, because I was like, oh my gosh, yes, of course, I grew up always having pets in the home. I didn't think about that. So just, I think it's an incredible initiative, and I was so pleased when Marc came on board with us at Together Co, and we're combining this together.
I found a really interesting point when I was looking for things to talk about. I mean, I could talk about this forever, obviously, but there was one piece of research I found that dog and cat owners laugh more daily than people without pets, and they obviously laugh at their pets or with their pets. But it's a lovely study that someone's done, and we need to laugh, and also obviously pets provide distraction and encourage us to be active, both physically and mentally. So you almost have to spin it around and say, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you consider an activity that involves pets? And we've described the whole spectrum, but really contact your local rescue shelter and ask what you can possibly do to help, and they'll be so happy. And who knows, maybe you'll end up fostering, rescuing, or just dog walking or cat cuddling. But it's all possible. Maybe all of the above. Who knows?
And there's something about flexibility there as well, because I know there's a couple of points that just come to mind from what you've both said, that we're in a really fast-paced world at the moment. I read somewhere recently that we're literally consuming the equivalent of a hard drive every few hours, because everything's so fast and so instant. And that's from our, physical connections, but from phones and laptops, Netflix now, the next episode loads. So we're so overloaded that I'm not sure most people, perhaps even since the pandemic, have pressed pause and gone, where am I at? Where's my emotional? What do I need? What am I missing? So like you said, when you move into London, when you first leave home and you're kind of navigating the world, sometimes you don't press pause because you're just straight on that kind of treadmill. And how we can help people maybe today, if they're sitting and listening to a podcast, they've done the first thing, so they've just stopped for a bit to be able to listen, hopefully the whole way through, or they come back to it, but they just start to evaluate. Because I don't think most people, and even if it's all right to say I'm bringing my own friends, I have friends who are avid dog lovers and cat lovers, and have those that have never had them, and they're quite rigid in the thinking, and they won't mind me saying that, and I have to work quite hard with them to go, look, come and spend some time with my dogs or my cat that I had, see what it's like to see, and so many of them like, oh, I feel really chilled when I leave your house, or I love to come and meet them. And it's just, I think some people have very rigid views, or perhaps you've had, and Marc, maybe you can help with this, some people have had bad experiences with animals, so it's kind of breaking down some of those barriers that might get someone from today to start thinking about, well, what could I do that involves a local rescue centre? If someone's maybe got a history where they're scared of dogs, how could you get people like that to kind of lean into that and maybe get around it and think about animals?
100%, and that's why the staff at rescue shelters are so knowledgeable and so brilliant at just becoming this reservoir of what's appropriate and what isn't with every single animal under their care. And they are the ones to go, that you get, a lot of people don't realize, you get puppies in rescue. People always assume, like the olden days, it's just aggressive, naughty dogs that just pee everywhere. It's not. These days, the rescue animals are animals whose owners have maybe passed away, owners who've maybe gone into temporary accommodation, especially at the moment with the whole mortgage crisis.
Absolutely,
you've got owners that have run out of money. You've got so many reasons why animals are in rescue. That's nothing to do with their behavior or peeing everywhere. It's just because there's a lovely expression that I heard years ago called plug-in pets. You know, their behavior is absolutely fine. They are toilet trained. They're fully vaccinated. They're wormed. They're fleed. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just plug-in pets. They're ready to go. And I think, again, there's this stigma of being bad pets. On the flip side of that, and I've learned this in the last few years from friends who have adopted very, very damaged dogs. So, for example, dogs that have been rescued from puppy farms, ex-breeding dogs. If a dog has an issue, behavioural, medical, whatever, it actually increases that bond when you're working so closely together to fix them, to improve their health and welfare. So really look at it as a project in terms of what can I do to help maybe the most damaged animal get better. And that can only sort of, really reinforce that bond. And you kind of bounce off each other in terms of how you improve the life of that pet, which obviously will then improve your life too as a result. So there's again, lots of things to think about, but it's having these conversations that hopefully someone listening, hopefully more than one person listening, will think, oh, let's give that a go. Or I know someone that this would benefit. So thank you for providing this platform, Tara.
Oh, I think it's well, I'm an avid animal lover. So we were talking just before we hit record, weren't we? And I didn't know you could just go and cuddle cats. So that's a bit dangerous in my house because we have two lovely local rescues to where we are in Horsham. And I follow them avidly, but I didn't know you. So I didn't know that. And I thought I was quite well, skilled up in what's happening locally. But the other thing I've just realised as well, that there might be some people who aren't in a position to do that, but they might know someone that they could just have the conversation with. So if you've already got a house full of pets and you just can't take another one on at the moment, but there's nothing to stop me having conversation with friends and saying, you could do this. And it doesn't have to be a pathway, does it? So just to kind of make that clear that you could just be someone who wants to go and just walk dogs or just go and cuddle cats. So it's not a kind of an expectation that you would then rescue an animal or foster an animal. Is that right? That you could
100%. And I think April will agree with me. I mean, there's the chatty cafe culture now popping up all over the country. People just hosting basically a table surrounded by people. And I'm pretty sure if you have a pet or a dog that's well behaved and likes meeting other people, obviously always put the dog's welfare first and take them along to a chatty cafe. So obviously check the venue's dog friendly. And the dog, I'm pretty sure, will become the focus of everyone's attention. And if there's, and we see this in care homes and pets as therapy dogs, that's the event, is the dog coming. And old people, especially in care homes, they can't wait for the next visit of the pet dog. So if you haven't got a dog, but you love dogs, that becomes something so important and something to look forward to, and I guess represents hope on a very short-term scale.
Absolutely.
And I think probably keeps a lot of people going.
Because I'm wondering, actually, when you look at kind of research then over loneliness and compassion, giving to others, spending time with others, a lot of those studies are really, they're over quite an extended period of time. And I'm not up to date. Maybe I should have read this before we did this podcast, but I'm just wondering if you just take the science behind hope, because there's a huge scientific basis behind hope. It's not just a kind of a nice, friendly term. Even if you're having short bursts, I just wonder what the impact of that is on you. It doesn't have to be that you are spending, a prolonged period. And hope, however short, we know that there's this huge scientific base behind that. Because it just reminded me, actually, one of my son's preschool, they used to do regular visits to a local elderly residence here, and that was so well received. But I don't think anyone's ever done that locally with dogs. You might be onto something there in terms of the chatty cafe equivalent for dogs. I know people have kind of friendly dog walk meets and things, and I see that advertised a lot. But, for people that maybe that might be a bit much, there may be something in that. I might steal that idea and run with that locally. So I'm thinking in terms of how can we help? So if there's somebody listening today who's like, oh, I didn't know, right, you could go and do these things. How can we get them from kind of chair to those next steps? Because I know you partner with, is it RSPCA Brighton, or are there other rescue centres that you guys kind of partner with?
There's so many rescue shelters. I mean, across the country, across the world. You just have to Google, where you live and put in rescue shelter. There's also the Association of Dogs and Cats Homes, who have quite a comprehensive list on their website. But there's local rescues all over the place, and they'll only be too pleased for you to contact them and offer help, whether it's, as I say, coming along, or maybe even just donating, or taking down some newspapers, or buying some tins of dog and cat food in the supermarket when you're next there and dropping them down. Again, it's this sense of purpose and this encouraging of interaction that's so important, even just to distract from feelings of loneliness and social isolation. So there's so many boxes being ticked, and at the end of the day, what's the animals benefit, humans benefit, and who knows what relationships can come of it, you know.
Absolutely.
And it's so simple, and that's what's wonderful about it. It's the simplicity, and it's a human-animal bond that's been celebrated for thousands of years, and now we're using it as a form of social prescribing and tackling loneliness,
which I think is lovely. So coming back to the social prescribing, in terms of the social prescribers that obviously come through Together Co, can some of those support people? So there may be people going, I want to do this, but how do I get there? Or I'm a bit anxious about leaving the house. Or is that something that your organisation can help with locally?
Absolutely. So obviously our organisation's within the Brighton and Hove area, but again, you can go and speak to your GP or look up on the NHS around social prescribing, because the idea with social prescribing and meeting your social prescriber is they work about what is important to you. They would,
it's really person-centred, isn't it?
It's very person-centred, very strength-based about, okay, we're here, but what can we do now? Small steps as well. What we do, particularly locally, is let's say there is an example where somebody's like, they're listening and they're like, oh, actually, yeah, sounds really good, but where do I start? You know, you can often feel, for me, I'll talk about my experience, like when you're lonely, you can almost not know where to take the next step because you're not feeling good as well. So it's about that person helping you take that first step. So they would research the rescue centre areas. They would, help go to those places. We also have a program where we have people that help you connect. So we have volunteers who do befriending, which is like the longer term relationship, but we also have the connector roles. So that'll be someone who, really loves dogs, really loves cats as well. It's like, absolutely, yeah, April, I'll come along with you. Let's go and have a look together and suss this out, so you don't have to do it on your own as well. We set up that whole package for that person then, so they can go and experience it.
So I'm just thinking, so I link in with I have a kind of an agreement with the local befriending service here that's run by the Citizens Advice, and they do some fantastic work because they can also provide transport as well, and they can they have a model where they can kind of give people 3 kind of introductory sessions if they're taking them somewhere. So if someone comes along to my project, they can have someone to support them just for the first few times. And I hadn't thought about that when we're looking wider afield, and other things to do is how you, because for some post-social prescribers through the NHS in my area, they're not able to provide that one-on-one going with you. It's more about signposting. So I'm just thinking about how this might help people listening, or if there's any other professionals, other people running projects, how we can all link in with our social prescribers and befriending services. And a lot of those are picking up again after the pandemic, because I know in my job prior to the pandemic there was a real dip in those kind of local services, and it was really hard if you're working with people and you just need support for them to get somewhere. And there's a lot of barriers about leaving the home, and obviously since the pandemic there are some people who haven't left the house still, apart from just basic shopping and things. And we know, don't we, from the kind of neuroscience, the psychology of it, that sometimes that first step is really hard. It's not as easy as get your coat on, let's go, check the bus timetable. So sometimes people do need a bit of kind of external support to kind of get out. In terms of next steps for people, I want to make it really practical. So someone's listening now, so they can make sure I've got this right. You can literally Google where your local rescue centres are. Your campaign, the kind of Pause to Connect, is that Brighton area? So anybody who's in Brighton and Hove, or does it extend beyond that?
So it's Brighton and Hove with Together Co and RSPCA Brighton. But Mark, sorry, you were probably going to say, actually,
no, I was going to say
it
was kind of set up just to see what would happen, I guess.
Yeah.
Sadly, I mean, April mentioned the launch. It was one of those rainy days, wasn't it? Early in the year, which was flanked on either side by the most beautiful sunshine week. We did it on the weekend, and it was horrible. So we didn't really. It was sad, wasn't it? Because we had so much to give, it felt, but it was just rainy. So we kind of launched it then. I have a vision that, I mean, it's obviously not specific to Brighton. It could be anywhere. and I would love it to be nationwide, even worldwide. It's literally just those Paws2connect, just to start that little conversation and to promote, the benefits of fostering and adoption of pets to combat loneliness. It's that simple. We're certainly not precious to Brighton. And I also want to make quite clear, we've talked a lot about dogs and cats, but this applies to guinea pigs, it applies to rabbits.
All pets, don't want to exclude anyone.
Every, there's a pet for everyone in every rescue, I'm pretty sure. So, make that first step, email, go down there if you can, leave the house, and just inquire and just start that conversation, because you never know where it's going to lead.
So if anybody listening now, so bringing the psychology then, stick a reminder in your phone for, 24 hours later, I'm going to make a call, or you can do it now after the podcast. Set yourself some little anchors, I would say, behavioural anchors. When could I go? How would I get there? Search the bus routes, whatever it is. What support do I need? Make a little plan. The other thing I've just realised as well, I'm a huge guinea pig and rabbit person. Oh my goodness. You can go and presumably then, can you just go and spend time with guinea pigs and rabbits and just, oh my goodness. I'm really glad I did this podcast now. I've gained a lot.
Obviously, it depends on the rescue, because they will have their rules and protocols, which is absolutely fine. But it all starts with that phone call or that email, and who, as I say, who knows where it'll end up, and how many animals you'll end up helping, and how many animals will end up helping you. It's so easy.
It's easy. That's the other thing as well. This doesn't have to be hard, does it? And I think what we've done today is maybe broken down a few kind of barriers or misconceptions about how you can link in with animals, what loneliness is. So even if somebody's not ready to go today or to look up something today, maybe if they can just spend some time thinking about, is that me? Am I the lonely person? I was doing some research recently for a program that I did, and I didn't realize the amount, and you mentioned this, Rachel, of young people, the kind of 18 to 24-year-olds that are experiencing loneliness at the moment, but don't realize that, they're in social situations all the time, or going away to uni and surrounded by people in this presumably lovely new experience, but actually experiencing really high rates of loneliness. It's quite shocking, actually, I think. That's a demographic we definitely don't tend to associate with. So I'm thinking, this podcast is for any age range. It's marked as explicit because we do talk about mental health issues and trauma. So maybe it's more that we get adults listening because of that. But anybody can go and do this, as long as you're independent, you can travel. It doesn't have to be something. And I know some people in my local area that just go and walk dogs of the younger generation, and they really love that. And I'm thinking, Mark, does it also help? Is there any kind of evidence based on the compassion side? Does it help the kind of dogs rescue centre journey if they're having regular interactions with people and if they've had, trauma histories, for example, and need to be rehomed? Presumably that's all helpful.
Of course, the more interactions, the better, and as long as it's done appropriately and with the dog's welfare, physical and mental in mind. And that, again, is determined by the staff of the rescue shelter who know that dog and they know the backstory, or cat. Then presumably they'll build some sort of rehabilitation plan, which involves interactions and exercise, and they'll take it stage by stage. So there's nothing really to hopefully nothing to put you off starting that journey, and look at it as an exciting journey, because you're going to be helping yourself, obviously, but you're going to be helping potentially many animals, and also providing a space for the next animal to fill. So you're kind of emptying the shelters, because there's so many animals that need these rescues. And one thing, we hosted an event in Westminster a few months ago, and one of the sad things that came out of it that was revealed was that rescues are having to say no to dogs and cats coming in because they're so full. And it's creating an unbelievable level of depression with the staff of rescues, who only went into rescue to provide those places and rehabilitate and rehome. And to say no to animals that desperately need to be rehomed and enter the rescue shelter, it's destroying them mentally. So, we can all do something, and if we can be part of emptying the shelters or donating or providing a better experience for these animals and obviously the staff, then please consider it.
Just made my ears prick up as well on a different level in terms of who's supporting those staff. Maybe that's a conversation for another day.
100%. And they need support. They really need support.
Yeah, really do. So I'm thinking today, there isn't any reason why people can't start check in with their own mental health. One thing that's really come to mind for me, April, as well, is, and from what I've read about Together Co, you mentioned something at the beginning about, social prescribing. I think has been a really great thing. There's been really mixed reviews when you look at some of the kind of media discussions around them, but I personally, in my local area, I think they've been a fantastic addition. But you mentioned something about not just going to the GP for that pill, and there is still such a heavy reliance on kind of GP medication and really traditional routes for particularly mental health issues, that actually there's something quite empowering for people about managing their own emotional health. That's something I'm really passionate about, that there are some people who do need that professional support, but a lot of people can do preventative work and can do a lot of kind of rehab on their own mental health by doing things for themselves, getting out, connecting. And even when you're walking that dog, you're connecting with the dog, but you're also in fresh air. And there's huge evidence about just walking for processing emotions more efficiently. So for me, I really like the ideas that we've discussed today about people just taking charge of their own well-being. That this is really prevent. You don't have to wait and sit on it. And I don't know if you have any thoughts on that before we finish.
Yeah, I think that is so right, because there is a place for medication, of course. And I would never, say that there isn't, but there is so many other things you can do. And you're exactly right. That gives you agency. You can do this. Yeah. You can take a very small step, like just researching a rescue centre today, just sending one email to the rescue centre, researching some animals that you might be interested in. And a couple of points I wanted to make on that as well is, firstly, obviously it is difficult if you are in rented, and I do appreciate that as well. Yeah. So I just want to make aware of that. So it's just, you can kind of go in and do maybe some, find out what opportunities are for volunteering, but also the cost of living I wanted to pick up on as well. And something that I felt was really beneficial in terms of fostering is that if you foster cats or dogs, but I know definitely with cats, because that's the pilot we're doing, they will help cover the costs as well. Yeah. So you then get that benefit, but also because of cost of living, you're going, how am I going to afford this? It's a really lovely way where everyone, including the wonderful animal, is benefiting as well. So I just want to mention that.
That's a really good point.
Situation as well. Just to highlight that, don't feel like you can't do this. Do look into fostering as well.
Because that's probably something that comes, I would have thought, straight into someone's mind is, but I'd like to, but I can't afford it. So it's a really good point, actually. I'm glad you brought that in. Is there anything else you wanted to bring in, Marc? Anything we haven't covered?
No, I think we've covered loads. Okay. I mean, it's and that's it in a way. It's just the simplicity. It's pick up the phone, go online, look up where your local rescue shelter or shelters are. Be aware that they all have their own protocols and their own rules, and some will be potentially more up for it than others in terms of you coming on the premises, or But just do your research, and if you can get there, then do it. And we're in the summer now, and there's quite a lot of charity dog shows around, and a lot of shelters will be having fundraisers and dog shows, and maybe even ask if you could volunteer. I mean, they all need volunteers, as we know. We went to the RSPCA one, didn't we, Tara? They all need volunteers just to be part of helping the rescue animals on the day. So
it's a lovely thing to do, isn't it? It's fun.
It's a nice entry level volunteering role to sort of get to know people, be part of a team. Again, sense of purpose, and again, who knows where it goes after that. So, but you do have to get out there and have that shared love of animals, and that's usually what takes you along that journey.
And that you won't be the only one. There'll be loads of people. That's really good timing. So my dog's in the background because the Amazon man's just arrived. I knew that would happen. He always manages to sneak in most podcasts at some point. He almost knows. That's him saying, look what a great life you can have. The other thing as well, I'm just thinking, is you can follow people on Facebook. So I follow all my local rescues on Facebook, and that's where you really get to know the stories. And that's, I think, quite special. So you get to hear about them, what they're experiencing. Quite a lot of them will post what they need, what they don't need from the community. And that's a really nice thing as well.
Just on that point, it's worth noting that if you can't afford to donate, which a lot of us can't, you can share those posts on social media, and that sometimes is just as valuable as donating money. and sharing on your networks and sharing on Twitter and Facebook or Instagram, whatever, because just getting the word out about these animals and that just even the concept of rescue animals can sometimes maybe trigger someone and go, oh, hang on a minute, I could maybe have a dog or a cat or know someone that could benefit. So the more we share and the more we interact, and I'm pretty sure April will agree with me, the more we connect, I think the more positive a society that we'll live in and share with animals.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
I need to do more of that. I don't share. I'm going to make that's going to be my next 24-hour mission. I'm going to do a post and share it, because I quite often just retweet things and then I forget to do it, and that's not great really. So that's my thing I'm going to take away from today. I'm going to go and do that. And I'm also going to go and Google whether I can stroke cats at my local rescue and go and hide and do that. I'll probably end up getting an ASBO. So if people want to find out more about you, as they're going to want to, where can they find you? Let's start with you, Mark. Where do you kind of hang out on socials, websites?
I'm a big Twitter fan. So Twitter is Marc the Vet, MarcThevet. And I also have a Facebook page, which is Marc the Vet. But I actually have a website now. Actually, I always did, but then it sort of stagnated and didn't work. But I've just redone it, and it's called marcthevet.net. MarcThevet.net. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'll put all these in the show notes as well.
Thank you very much.
What about you, April? Where do we find you? And Together Co, of course.
So Together Co, website, obviously, togetherco.org.uk. Really easy way to connect with Together Co is drop us an email. We have a single point of access that's running Monday to Fridays at hello@togetherco.org.uk. Drop us a line, we'll pick it up and respond. We're on all the social platforms as well, so you can find us on Twitter, Instagram @HelloTogetherCo. We're also on LinkedIn, and that's mainly where you'll see me, is on LinkedIn as well. So April Baker or Hello Together Co.
I'll be coming to stalk you now as well, because I don't think I found you yet. Thank you for coming on, but I can't let you go. So my signature move, which I've realised every passing podcast really shows my age, because I've had some people that go, what's the signature move? Is if you were to give us one adversity takeaway each, what would it be? So one little nugget about loneliness, connecting with animals, what might that be? Who wants to go first? I'm not allowed to let you go until you do it.
Oh, I knew you were going to say that. I always get thrown with last minute questions like this, because I'm always like, got to say something really impactful. Come on. So what's the takeaway? Little nugget of information around loneliness for me is, please know your social health is key for a good life, and know it's so important for you. It's okay if it's not great right now, you can build it, but the answer within the good life is your relationships. So invest in those, and even if it's like we're talking about a relationship with your pets as well, that's my bit in terms of all the reading I've done around what makes a good life. It is our relationships. So start today, have that research for people and pets.
Thank you. Mark, have you got a little nugget, little takeaway?
I think it's just reinforcing what we've already discussed. It's just do something nice for your local rescue. And that could just mean researching it and following them on socials. Or, as we said, sharing a post on Facebook of an animal that desperately needs a home, or donating, or, connecting and going down there, or just speaking to them on the phone about how you could possibly help them and help their animals. So, just make that first step, because if you help your local rescue, you're going to be helping the lives of those rescue animals. And there's that famous quote, about saving the life of one animal won't change the world, but it actually will change the world for that particular animal.
I like that. Yeah.
And don't underestimate how important that is, because I think saving the life of that particular animal may even save your life too.
Yeah, I love that. I would say just one little thing. If you follow your local rescue on Facebook, quite often they will do posts of how animals get on. And there's been one dog in one of my local rescues for a good couple of years that finally got a home recently. And so many people were talking about it. I heard people in coffee shops saying that this particular dog got a home. And that's nice, even if you're not part of it, just to follow the journey makes you feel good. Thank you so much for coming on. Sorry, Mark, did you want to say something else?
I was going to say, just carrying on from what you just said, the sort of the dogs especially the long stay dogs or cats, they call them the sticky ones because they stick around for so long. They almost become celebrities in themselves, don't they? And they have their followings, as you've just mentioned. Everyone's talking about them. So maybe the takeaway message is to try and promote and make even more dogs or cats or even rabbits that are long stays famous and talked about, and maybe that will encourage people to adopt or foster them as well, or just donate or go and cuddle or walk them.
That kind of, they just stay with you, those things, don't they?
They do.
Thank you so much for coming on. It's been brilliant. Thank you for bearing with my tech stuff as well. And I can't wait to get this episode out there. So I will get editing.
Thank you so much.
Get you out.
Yeah, thank you. Really